Ladies and gentlemen, welcome aboard. Today, we're about to embark on a journey through the life and career of one of Hollywood's most delightful hidden gems, Justine Lupe. Now, I know what you're thinking, wait, Justine who? But trust me, by the end of this video, you'll not only know her name, but also want to binge watch everything she's ever been in. Justine Lupe is like that brilliant side dish at a restaurant. You come for the steak, or in this case, the show's lead, but it's that perfect little truffle mac and cheese on the side that leaves the most lasting impression. With her infectious charm and magnetic screen presence, Justine has been quietly taking over our screens one supporting role at a time. And today, we're diving into 4 of her best works that'll make you appreciate her talent even more. Mr. Mercedes, Succession, Christilla, and the marvelous Mrs. Maisel. But before we get into the nitty-gritty of her filmography, let's set the stage. You know that feeling when you're watching a show and a character walks in, and suddenly you think, hey, I know this actor. She was in, something, right? Well, that's the magic of Justine Lupe. She's like the human version of that song you can't get out of your head but can't quite name. And when you finally figure out where you've seen her before, it's a little like finding $20 in an old coat pocket. Unexpected, but so satisfying. Now, don't get me wrong, Justine isn't just some hey I know her actress. This woman can do it all. Comedy, she's got it. Drama, no problem. Characters with quirks, heart, or just plain weird vibes. Bring it on. If there's an art to playing characters who steal scenes without demanding them, Justine is a Picasso with a side of Meryl Streep. And that's exactly why we're here today, to celebrate her most iconic roles and, of course, have some fun along the way. So sit back, relax, and let's explore how Justine Lupe turned side roles into showstoppers. Oh, and don't forget, hit that like button if you love underdog actors who turn every small role into a masterpiece. This video isn't just a deep dive, it's a love letter to the art of stealing the scene. All right, folks, buckle up. We're entering Stephen King territory. Mr. Mercedes isn't your average whodunit. This series is packed with dark twists, psychological thrills, and spine-chilling suspense. And in the midst of all this craziness, we have Justine Lupe playing the wonderfully eccentric, socially awkward, yet lovable Holly Gibney. If Sherlock Holmes and Luna Lovegood had a baby, it might just grow up to be Holly Gibney. 1. Who is Holly Gibney? Holly Gibney is one of those characters who sneaks up on you. At first glance, you might think, oh, here's just another quirky sidekick. But after a few scenes, she pulls you in so deeply that you can't stop rooting for her. Imagine a person who has the social grace of a broken Roomba, but the problem-solving skills of an escape room master. That's Holly. She's the niece of one of the victims in the Mr. Mercedes case, and let me tell you, she's anything but ordinary. She deals with obsessive-compulsive tendencies, social anxiety, and a whole lot of emotional baggage. Yet somehow, she's always the smartest person in the room. 2. Justine Lupe's performance. A hidden gem in a sea of chaos. Now, what makes Justine Lupe's performance so brilliant is that she doesn't try to play Holly as just quirky. Nope, she makes Holly human. She's not there to be a walking trope of the socially awkward genius. She's vulnerable, painfully honest, and yet somehow charmingly funny. You know that person who overthinks everything but ends up being right most of the time? That's Holly. Except, you wouldn't trust her with small talk at a party, but you definitely want her on your side when there's a psychopath on the loose. Holly's brilliance isn't just in solving cases. It's in how she relates to people. Well, or tries to relate to people. She's awkward and a little fidgety. Sure, but Justine makes it endearing. Every time Holly walks into a room, you can't help but lean in to see what she'll say next. 3. Holly's relationship with Bill Hodges. And here's where the magic really happens. Her partnership with Bill Hodges, played by Brendan Gleeson. On paper, these two couldn't be more different. Bill is this grumpy, world-weary ex-cop, and Holly is, well, Holly. But Justine and Brendan's chemistry makes this odd couple dynamic feel so real. Holly slowly pulls Bill out of his shell, and Bill grounds Holly when she's spiraling. It's like a buddy cop movie, but with emotional depth and serial killers. 4. Why Holly Gibney stands out. So, what makes Holly Gibney such a standout character? Well, she's relatable, for one. She's dealing with anxiety and self-doubt just like a lot of us. But instead of letting it hold her back, she turns it into her superpower. It's refreshing to see a character who's not polished and perfect, but real, and still saves the day. This role also marks a turning point for Justine Lupe as an actress. It's not just a quirky performance, it's a layered, heartfelt portrayal of a woman navigating life's challenges while hunting down killers. She takes Holly from being a mere plot device to being the emotional heart of the show. 5. Why Mr. Mercedes is more than just a thriller. Mr. Mercedes is more than just a suspense series. It's a story about human connection, second chances, and the struggle to overcome personal demons. And Holly is right at the center of all that. Through her friendship with Bill, we see a beautiful story of healing and acceptance unfold. It's rare to see such a nuanced portrayal of mental health in a thriller, but Mr. Mercedes pulls it off, and a lot of that is thanks to Justine's performance. 6. Fun fact: Holly's character has a future in other Stephen King works. Oh, and here's a little nugget for you Stephen King fans. Holly Gibney shows up in other King stories too, like The Outsider and If It Bleeds. So if you're as obsessed with her character as we are, there's more Holly to discover out there. 7. Final thoughts on Mr. Mercedes, wrapping up this segment. So what's the takeaway here? Justine Lupe's portrayal of Holly Gibney isn't just about catching killers. It's about showing us that being different isn't a flaw, it's a strength. Holly teaches us that no matter how awkward or broken we feel, we're still capable of greatness. And let's be honest, if Holly Gibney can help bring down a serial killer, we can probably survive that awkward Zoom call or weird first date. All right, folks, that wraps up our deep dive into Mr. Mercedes. But don't go anywhere, we're just getting started. Coming up next, we shift gears from dark thrillers to corporate drama and family dysfunction. Oh yes, it's time to talk about Succession and Justine Lupe's brilliant turn as Willa Ferrera. Stay tuned. 1. Welcome to the world of Succession. All right, folks, it's time to leave the crime-solving world of Mr. Mercedes and dive headfirst into the chaotic family feuds and corporate backstabbing of Succession. If Shakespeare had written a TV series about billionaires with emotional constipation, Succession would be it. And smack in the middle of this twisted dynasty, we have Justine Lupe playing Willa Ferrera, a former escort turned, well, let's say accidental wife-to-be. 2. Who is Willa Ferrera? Willa Ferrera isn't exactly your typical Succession power player. She's not an ambitious executive vying for the family throne, nor a lawyer pulling strings in the shadows. No, Willa's whole arc begins with escorting services. She was originally paid to spend time with Connor Roy, the eldest son of the Roy family, and as with all things Succession, things got complicated. Before you know it, Willa finds herself sitting at Roy family dinners, side-eyeing billionaires, and saying, "Yeah, sure, let's get married." She's kind of like the person who thought she was signing up for a cruise vacation and ended up on the Titanic. Except instead of drowning, she somehow floats through the chaos with this beautifully deadpan grace. And the real magic is that Justine Lupe plays her with just the right amount of oblivious charm. Willa doesn't belong in this world, and that's exactly what makes her so fascinating to watch. 3. Willa and Connor, the oddest couple in television history. Willa and Connor Roy. Now this is a love story for the ages, sort of. Imagine a man so rich he builds a ranch in the desert just because, paired with a woman who once politely admitted, "I'm not even sure if I love you." Their relationship is like a weird social experiment where you throw together incompatible ingredients and somehow end up with soup. Not necessarily good soup, but soup nonetheless. But let's be real, there's a strange charm to their dynamic. Connor is desperate for validation, and Willa just wants to finish her playwriting projects in peace. What makes Justine's portrayal brilliant is that she never turns Willa into a gold digger stereotype. Sure, she's benefiting from Connor's money, but you get the sense that she's genuinely trying to make the best out of a bizarre situation. And in a world as cold and calculating as the Roy family's, That kind of honesty is surprisingly refreshing. 4. Willa's role in the dysfunctional Roy family. Willa's entry into the Roy family is like dropping a yoga instructor into a Game of Thrones battle. She doesn't play their ruthless power games, but somehow, she survives. Watching her interact with Logan, Kendall, Shiv, and Roman is like watching someone try to parallel park in a Formula One race. It's a disaster waiting to happen, but you can't look away. Willa often says the quiet part out loud, like when she admits that she only agreed to Connor's marriage proposal because it's better than the alternatives. And yet, despite the awkwardness, you can't help but root for her. Maybe it's the fact that she never pretends to be something she's not. Or maybe it's because, deep down, we all have a little bit of Willa in us, just trying to get through life without making too many waves. 5. Justine Lupe's subtle brilliance. Justine Lupe's performance as Willa Ferrera is the perfect example of how a talented actor can turn a small role into a scene stealer. On paper, Willa could have been a background character, a minor player in a story about billionaires and backstabbing. But Justine brings so much subtlety to the role that Willa becomes unforgettable. Her facial expressions, those tiny flickers of discomfort, forced smiles, and moments of genuine surprise, do more storytelling than a monologue ever could. Justine captures the essence of someone who knows she doesn't belong, but is determined to survive anyway. It's awkward, it's funny, and it's unexpectedly moving. 6. Final thoughts. Willa Ferrera, the outsider who stole our hearts. In a show filled with power struggles and betrayal, Willa Ferrera offers a rare touch of honesty and humor. She might not be part of the Roy family's brutal power games, but in her own quiet way, she stands out. Willa reminds us that not every battle is worth fighting, and sometimes the best strategy is just to go with the flow, preferably while holding a glass of champagne. Justine Lupe turns Willa into more than just a supporting character. She's the audience's secret favorite. And in a show as cutthroat as Succession, that's no small feat. All right, friends, that's it for Willa and Succession. But we're not done yet. And trust me, things are about to get a whole lot funnier. Stay tuned. Welcome to the world of Mrs. Maisel. All right, folks, put on your best vintage dress, pour yourself an old-fashioned, and prepare for a time-traveling adventure to 1950s New York. The marvelous Mrs. Maisel isn't just a show. It's a whole vibe, a whirlwind of comedy, heartbreak, and ambition, all tied together by the dazzling Midge Maisel, who breaks every mold imaginable in her pursuit of stand-up comedy. But let's not forget, we're here to talk about the unsung hero in this jazzy spectacle, the wonderfully neurotic, hilariously endearing Astrid Weissman, played by none other than Justine Lupe. 2. Who is Astrid Weissman? Astrid Weissman is the kind of character you can't help but love, even though she makes you a little nervous. Picture this. A shiksa who's so desperate to be accepted by her husband's uptight Jewish family that she's practically trying too hard, all the time. You know that friend who shows up to a potluck with a 10-page speech about why her casserole is authentic? Yeah, that's Astrid. And in every scene she's in, Justine Lupe brings a perfect mix of comedy, insecurity, and genuine sweetness. 3. Astrid's relationship with the Weissman family. The Weissman family is, well, let's say, particular. Rose is a sophisticated force of nature, and Abe is a grumpy intellectual, neither of whom makes it easy for outsiders to break in. And yet, Astrid tries her best. Watching her fumble through awkward conversations, trying to earn their approval, is like watching someone walk on a tightrope made of eggshells. But there's something endearing about her relentless optimism. She wants to belong so badly, even though the Weissmans treat her like she's a tourist in their carefully curated world. 4. Justine Lupe's performance, balancing comedy and vulnerability. Now, what makes Justine Lupe's portrayal of Astrid so memorable is how she walks the fine line between comedy and vulnerability. On the surface, Astrid's antics are laugh-out-loud funny, like the time she panicked and overshared at dinner. But underneath the awkwardness, there's a deep sense of longing. Astrid isn't just a comic relief character. She's a woman desperately trying to find her place in a world that seems just slightly out of reach. And that's where Justine's brilliance shines through. She makes us feel for Astrid, even as we're laughing at her missteps. We've all been in situations where we wanted to fit in but just couldn't quite get it right. And Justine taps into that universal feeling, turning Astrid into one of the most relatable characters on the show. 5. Astrid and Joel, a marriage full of expectations. Then there's Astrid's marriage to Joel, Midge's brother. If you think navigating the Weissman family is tough, try being married to one of them. Astrid's relationship with Joel adds another layer of complexity to her character. She loves him, sure, but there's also a constant pressure to live up to the expectations of his family. And Justine portrays this dynamic beautifully. You can see it in the way Astrid tries, sometimes too hard, to be the perfect wife. It's funny, yes, but it's also deeply human. 6. Astrid as a symbol of outsiders in The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel. In many ways, Astrid represents the outsider experience in The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel. While Midge breaks societal norms by becoming a female comedian, Astrid's struggle is quieter but just as meaningful. She's not trying to change the world, she's just trying to find her place in it. And that's something we can all relate to. Through Astrid, Justine Lupe reminds us that not every battle is about ambition. Sometimes, it's about acceptance. 7. Final thoughts. Astrid's role in The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel legacy. Astrid Weissman may not be the star of The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, but she's an essential part of the show's charm. Her awkward, endearing presence adds a layer of warmth to the story, and her struggles remind us that finding acceptance, whether from family or ourselves, is a journey worth taking. And let's give credit where it's due. Justine Lupe took a small role and made it unforgettable. Astrid might not be standing on a stage like Midge, but she's earned her spot in our hearts. And that, my friends, is truly marvelous. And that's a wrap on Astrid and The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel. All right, folks, let's get real. The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel did for Justine Lupe what a triple espresso does on a Monday morning. It gave her career a delightful jolt. Now, Astrid Weissman wasn't a headline role, sure. She's not cracking jokes on stage like Midge or plotting a hostile takeover like Logan Roy. But that's the beauty of it. Astrid is the underdog character who sneaks up on you. By slipping into the shoes of someone as awkwardly lovable as Astrid, Justine Lupe demonstrated one essential truth of Hollywood. Sometimes the small, weird roles leave the biggest impressions. Like an appetizer that turns out to be the best dish at the restaurant. Astrid was unexpected, but unforgettable. One of the biggest takeaways for Justine Lupe from Maisel? Flexing those comedy muscles. And we're not talking slapstick or over-the-top gags here. No. Astrid's humor is the cringe-inducing, second-hand embarrassment variety. It's the kind of humor that makes you whisper, "Oh no, please don't say that." And then she says it anyway. Justine mastered the fine art of awkward comedy. Those small moments where Astrid tries way too hard to be accepted but only ends up digging herself deeper. And it worked. She turned Astrid's social stumbles into comic gold, proving that humor isn't always about punchlines. It's about being painfully, wonderfully human. The role of Astrid also showed off another side of Justine, her ability to balance comedy with vulnerability. Sure, Astrid is a bit of a mess, but there's heart behind those awkward conversations. And that's where Justine Lupe shines. She brings depth to a character who could have easily been one-dimensional, a comic relief sidekick, but instead becomes someone you genuinely care about. This blend of humor and emotion, in a world where actors are often judged by how loud or flashy their roles are, Justine showed that subtlety and sincerity can steal the show, too. And that, dear viewers, is the real lesson from Astrid Weissman. It's okay to be awkward, it's okay to try too hard, and it's okay if things don't go perfectly. Because sometimes, just being yourself, especially when that self is played by Justine Lupe, is more than enough to leave a lasting impression. And there you have it, folks. One actress who made them all unforgettable, Justine Lupe, in all her awkward, hilarious, charming, and emotionally layered glory. From crime dramas to family comedies, from office politics to period pieces, This woman has proved she can take on anything. Whether it's solving mysteries, scheming through corporate intrigue, awkwardly integrating into a traditional Jewish family, or fighting for love and tacos, Justine Lupe never misses a beat. Her range is so impressive, she could probably star in an action movie next, or play a sentient AI trying to fit in at a suburban PDA meeting, and somehow we'd still believe her. Now, what makes Justine's career so exciting isn't just the roles she's played, it's how she plays them. There's a certain magic in her performances. She brings a quiet, almost sneaky charm to the screen, the kind that makes you think, wait, why do I suddenly care so much about this side character? Her versatility is her greatest strength. Whether she's playing a quirky misfit, a cold strategist, or a socially awkward housewife, Justine always finds that delicate balance between humor and vulnerability. And that's not easy. Too much of one and you lose the emotional core. Too much of the other and you miss the humor. But Justine nails it, every time. Let's talk about something we all know but don't say out loud. Justine Lupe is one of those underrated gems in the acting world. She's not on every magazine cover, and you might not see her hosting a late-night talk show yet, but make no mistake, she's a rising star. Her career is like a slow-cooked stew. Sure, it takes time, but the result is absolutely worth it. And the great thing about being an underrated actor is that when people finally do discover you, they feel like they've unearthed a hidden treasure. And judging by the fan buzz surrounding her performances, that treasure is shining brighter every day. Justine Lupe's career is also a reminder that success isn't always about the flashiest roles or the biggest names. Sometimes, it's about showing up, doing the work, and turning even the smallest opportunities into something memorable. It's about being adaptable, staying true to your craft, and not being afraid to embrace roles that aren't mainstream. Because let's be real, who knew Astrid Weissman would become one of the standout characters in Mrs. Maisel? Who would have thought Willa's arc in Succession would be so satisfying by the end? Justine teaches us that in both life and art, there's no such thing as a small role, only small thinking. Now comes the big question. What's next for Justine Lupe? Will she star in a new crime drama where she's both detective and suspect? A romantic comedy where she plays a chaotic wedding planner? Or maybe a sci-fi epic where she teaches aliens how to fit into Earth's corporate culture? With Justine's range, the possibilities are endless. Hollywood is always looking for the next big thing, and trust me, Lupe is on the brink of something huge. One breakout role is all it takes for the world to realize what we've known all along. This woman is a powerhouse. So if I were you, I'd keep a close eye on her career. We might be just one casting announcement away from seeing her headline her own series or steal the show in a blockbuster. So here's to Justine Lupe, the quirky sidekick, the loyal detective, the awkward housewife, and the shrewd businesswoman. The woman who can make us laugh, cry, cringe, and cheer, sometimes all at once. She's the kind of actor who quietly sneaks into your favorite shows and makes you wonder how they ever worked without her. Her journey is just getting started, and whether she's taking center stage or stealing scenes from the sidelines, one thing is clear. Justine Lupe is a star in her own right, and we can't wait to see where she shines next. Thanks for sticking with us through this deep dive into the fabulous world of Justine Lupe. If you enjoyed this journey, hit that like button, leave us a comment with your favorite Justine Lupe role, and don't forget to subscribe, because if you think this was good, just wait until we cover her next big project.